Hello and welcome to my presentation on Speaking the Same Language, Welsh-English Concordance and Connection in Therapy. My name is Caroline Williams and I'm at the end of studying the MSc Counselling course. Just a little bit of background on me. I studied my undergraduate in psychology here at Bangor and then went on to study my PGCE, and I currently teach psychology to A-level students. I wanted to study counselling as it's the topic that interested me in my teaching practice, and it's also something that I wanted to develop for when I am mentoring my students in personal tutorial. The reason that we focused on Welsh for our research project, and particularly the Welsh language within therapy, is because of discussions that we had within our research group, as some of them are fluent Welsh speakers, and we wanted to look at the benefits of being able to speak the same language, or the effect that it could have on clients if the counsellor couldn't speak the same first language as them. So a little bit of background to the research. So language is a uniquely human faculty that serves as a primary means of communication between humans. It can be defined as a system that consists of symbols or signs that convey meanings, and it allows the speaker to produce and to communicate an infinite number of sentences. This facilitates the sharing of information and also shapes the way individuals perceive and engage with the world around them. Tannen in 2013 suggests that communication is more than just the transmission of information. It's the process by which people share information, ideas, and feelings through the use of signs, symbols, and behaviours. And from a psychological and sociolinguistic perspective, language is closely linked to our identity, our cognition, and our social interactions. And it's through language that individuals construct and communicate their sense of self. They navigate these social norms and they make meaning of personal experiences. So in a therapeutic context, the nuances of language become particularly significant as the process of articulating emotions, exploring past experiences, and building a therapeutic alliance all rely heavily on linguistic expression. So the therapeutic alliance is the collaborative relationship between the counsellor and the client. So the ability to communicate effectively enables the counsellor to listen actively, to validate the client's experiences, and provide feedback in a manner that promotes self-reflection and growth. Language concordance is the alignment between a client's and a therapist's language proficiency, and it plays a pivotal role in establishing and enhancing the therapeutic alliance. Previous research indicates that when clients and therapists share a common language, it fosters trust, reduces misunderstandings, and facilitates a deeper emotional connection, all of which are essential components of a strong therapeutic relationship. Tannen states that when people from different geographical areas, using different languages, communicate, their words may not be understood exactly as they were meant, and this could therefore be an issue in counselling if the therapist is unable to communicate in the client's first language. Ports and Schofler suggest that using a second language can lead to miscommunication and even misunderstanding, and these findings are particularly important in counselling, where clear and accurate communication is crucial to achieving therapeutic goals. Kurosaki found that bilingual counsellors often establish a stronger rapport with bilingual clients, where both client and counsellor speak the same two languages, due to a shared linguistic and cultural framework. However, bilingualism has largely been neglected in clinical practice, according to Burke, and further information is required regarding its role in therapy. One reason why bilingualism may be neglected in practice is that there may be a monolingual bias in many training programs, and this can result in a lack of awareness on how to work effectively with bilingual clients. Another reason could be the common misperception about code switching by therapists, and code switching is the act of switching between languages in a conversation. It's often assumed that speaking two languages can confuse clients or delay developments, rather than being seen as a natural and adaptive behaviour of proficient bilinguals. Psychometric tests are often standardised and developed in monolingual contexts, and they may not capture the experience of bilingual clients, which can lead to a misdiagnosis due to possible cultural misunderstandings and the use of monolingual norms. And this neglect of the use of bilingualism and bilingual counsellors in clinical practice often results in less effective therapies for bilingual clients. So clients who have received counselling in their native language compared to those counselled in a second language consistently report higher levels of satisfaction, a stronger therapeutic alliance, and more favourable outcomes from their counselling. Marcos highlighted that the cognitive and emotional demands of speaking a second language can create emotional detachment, which may lead to misinterpretations and distortions of the client's expressed concerns. And this detachment may hinder the depth and the accuracy of emotional expression, therefore making it more difficult for clinicians to identify and address these core issues. And this evidence supports the argument that bilingual counsellors are necessary for successful therapeutic outcomes. So bilingualism in therapy not only facilitates direct communication, but also fosters a sense of safety and validation for the clients, particularly those from minority linguistic backgrounds. Jarrett and Mizzen found that therapists often struggle when they lack confidence using the client's preferred language, noting that such gaps can hinder emotional expression and therefore lead to poorer therapeutic engagement. The provision of bilingual or linguistically competent therapy is not simply a matter of convenience, it's a matter of ethical responsibility and equitable care. And Irvin et al. Stressed that the absence of linguistically appropriate services can lead to misdiagnosis, to inappropriate treatment planning, and sometimes to the early termination of therapy. So research has been carried out with regards to the Swedish language and the Spanish language, but little research has been carried out into the Welsh language. In Wales, linguistic identity is closely tied to cultural heritage and personal belonging. And as I've just said, little research has been carried out into whether first language Welsh speakers would prefer a Welsh-speaking or a bilingual therapist in their counselling sessions. So this current research aims to address this gap in the research by investigating the demand for Welsh-speaking therapists in North Wales. So for this research, we have two hypotheses that we were testing. Hypothesis 1 is that first language Welsh speakers will report a greater preference for a bilingual Welsh-English speaking counsellor than a monolingual English speaking counsellor. And hypothesis 2 is that the age of the participants will be positively correlated with the preference for a bilingual Welsh-English speaking counsellor. So on to the methodology now for our research. Our target population was fluent Welsh speakers from the general UK population, and they needed to be aged 18 and over. We aimed to collect data from between 150 and 200 participants using an opportunity sample, and we recruited participants via SONA, which is the student participation panel at Bangor University, also via social media such as Facebook and Instagram, and by word of mouth. Our design was a non-experimental quantitative research design using a structured questionnaire, and descriptive statistical analysis was used. We also looked at a correlation between the age of participants and their preference for a bilingual Welsh-English counsellor. Our measures were an online questionnaire designed using side toolkits. There was a total of 10 questions. The first 8 of these gathered some demographic information such as age, their first language, had they had counselling, etc. Then one question contained 14 statements, and participants were asked to state their level of agreement using a 5-point Likert scale. And then the final question was more of an open question to collect qualitative data on language preference and their thoughts about language use within counselling. So for our procedure, they first read an information sheet and signed a consent form if they were happy to go ahead. Then within the questionnaire, we collected the demographic information and then completion of language preference questionnaire. After that, they had the option to leave their email if they wanted to find out more about our research findings. And then finally, they had a debrief statement to deal with any issues they may have or some of the questions that they may have had with regard to the questionnaire. So our results, we collected quantitative and qualitative data. So for the quantitative data with regard to language preference, 55% of participants showed a preference to speak Welsh in counselling, and 22% of participants showed a preference to speak English in counselling. 49% said they would be happy to speak in either English or Welsh, and 60% felt that being able to switch between Welsh and English during the therapy sessions was an important factor. 55% of participants felt that being able to understand their therapist was more important than the language spoken. With regard to the therapeutic alliance, several factors contributed to a strong alliance. 51% of participants agreed that a Welsh-speaking counsellor would make the therapy session feel more genuine. 51% of participants also felt that a Welsh-speaking counsellor would help to develop a sense of trust. 41% felt that a Welsh-speaking counsellor would increase their sense of acceptance. However, 43% were unsure about this. With regard to emotional expression, Welsh was the preferred language to express thoughts, feelings and experiences. 37% of participants stated a preference to express thoughts, feelings and experiences through English. 76% agreed that they use Welsh words to express some emotions that are actually not present in the English language. And 70% agreed that they use English words to express some emotions that aren't present in the Welsh language. And then finally, for quantitative data, was looking at cultural understanding. 82% level of agreement that cultural understanding was very important to them, or important in the counselling sessions. A 66% level of agreement with regard to the importance of being able to access therapy through the medium of Welsh. And then with regard to our qualitative data, there were several key themes highlighted linked to linguistic identity, emotional comfort, perceived therapeutic efficacy, and socio-linguistic context in Wales. Some of the statements that they left on the final question of the questionnaire stated that the language I use depends on the subject. So, for example, I think about work in English, but I think about home in Welsh. Being able to switch to English to perhaps express some aspects while having the bulk of the sessions through the medium of Welsh would be desirable. Personally, the ability to switch from Welsh to English is vitally important. It's very important to have access to any type of service in your chosen language as your first language. Not having this is a disadvantage as some are not confident or comfortable, perhaps, to talk about their feelings in their second language. So moving now on to our discussion and, what exactly does this all mean? So the results from this study clearly support the argument regarding the importance of language in therapeutic context. Tannen emphasised the risk of misinterpretation when individuals from different linguistic backgrounds communicate. This risk is especially pertinent in counselling, where effective communication is essential for understanding client experiences and fostering trust. The findings from this research show that the majority of participants expressed a preference for a bilingual Welsh-English speaking therapist over a monolingual English speaking therapist, highlighting the significance of shared language in therapeutic settings and therefore supporting previous research. These preference results suggest that clients feel more comfortable, understood, and emotionally secure when able to speak in Welsh, their native tongue, during therapy sessions. The therapeutic alliance, widely recognised as a key predictor of positive outcomes, is likely to be strengthened when the client does not have to struggle with language or a fear of being misunderstood. So training programs often exhibit a monolingual bias, potentially leaving therapists ill-equipped to recognise or support linguistic behaviour. This gap in clinical training may foster misconceptions, such as those highlighted by Prioritise, who notes that code switching is frequently pathologised rather than embraced as a normative bilingual practice. And this current research demonstrates the importance of breaking down these gaps and misconceptions within therapeutic training programs. The structural limitations imposed by monolingual psychometric instruments exacerbate these challenges as they may fail to capture bilingual clients' nuanced experiences, resulting in skewed assessments or possible misdiagnosis. In this current study, the participants' preference for bilingual practitioners thus reflects a desire for more culturally and linguistically congruent therapy. And it aligns with Santiago Rivera's contention that neglecting bilingualism in counselling can lead to suboptimal therapeutic outcomes. Taken together, these findings advocate for a reconceptualisation of clinical practice and one that incorporates bilingual competence not as an optional asset, but rather as a fundamental requirement in linguistically diverse communities. So the preference for bilingual counsellors expressed in our research supports earlier findings, which suggest that clients experience stronger therapeutic alliance and report higher levels of satisfaction when counselling occurs in their native language. Participants in the current study described how the ability to express complex emotional content in Welsh not only fostered greater authenticity, but also reduced the risk of miscommunication, a factor they identified as particularly important when addressing sensitive or deeply personal issues. So these current findings again support the call for prioritisation of language concordance through bilingual counselling in bilingual contexts such as Wales. The current research findings identify that accessing a Welsh-speaking therapist fosters trust in the therapeutic relationship, demonstrating that language concordance is one key element of cultivating this trust. Trust is not simply built through verbal comprehension, but through the sense of being understood on a deeper, more culturally congruent level. For many Welsh speakers, the ability to converse in Welsh with a therapist signals more than shared language. It signifies shared values, identity and worldview, all of which are critical in establishing psychological safety and relational. With regard to the diversity of Welsh dialects across regions, so variations in vocabulary, pronunciation and grammar between North and South Wales, offering counselling in Welsh is a critical step forward towards culturally responsive care. However, it may not be sufficient to do that on its own, and the results reflect a broader desire not just for language matching, but for a deeper linguistic and cultural competence. So overall, the studies provided compelling evidence that language plays a central role in shaping therapeutic experiences among first language Welsh-speaking bilinguals. These findings support a growing body of literature that emphasises the necessity of bilingual counselling provision in linguistically diverse contexts, particularly in regions like Wales, where the native language holds deep cultural significance. The lack of formal training and awareness around bilingual competence, especially regarding code switching, dialectical variation and the emotional nuances of first language use represents a significant gap in professional practice. So thank you for listening to my presentation, and if you have any further questions, please comment in the comment section, or you can email me on my personal email. Thank you very much for listening.